because I record my interviews and share them. And this is a super fundamental part. Sometimes people don't like the fact that I record my interviews. It's really important for me that I record my interviews because I don't expect myself to always get the right answer the first time.
Yeah,
I have to
makes
go
sense.
back and look at it, and I understand there's a privacy concern with many people not wanting to be interviewed, and I totally understand that. But it is very difficult in order to do this large scale project that I'm trying to do, when people uh, do not want to be interviewed or do not want to be
Hmm,
recorded. So
I
recordings
see.
are fundamental to my process, and the collaboration that I do with other typists, other colleagues, which I don't do in all cases, is fundamental to my process and my ability to go back and look and clear my head from talking to that person, take a few days, take a week, and then look at the recording again, revisit that.
Hmm,
That takes a long time, but that's also fundamental to my process. All of these things I think are very important in typing, and this is a super relevant topic to transition to in this other part of this presentation. This presentation I originally did on another server a couple of years ago. This is about how to do typing work and to do typing interviews. And it doesn't matter what model you're using. It doesn't matter if you're using Socionics in the Enneagram or OPS or CSJ, CSJ's bastardization of a system, or whatever model you're using. It does not matter. You should do the interviews in the same way. This is already a controversial take that some people will not like, but this is true. Um, and when you do an interview, your job is reading. You are trying to read your client. So you have a theoretical model, perhaps Socionics, perhaps the Enneagram, perhaps MBTI, some model like this, which has a bunch of different types that have these different points of view. Your job as an interviewer is to figure out which of those points of view your client is talking from. And you should do this by getting yourself out of the way and letting your client ramble freely. I like asking open ended questions that are not very specific. In fact, for a long time, the question that I used as an opener is tell me about yourself. That's a little too open ended. A lot of people don't like the question. And I still ask this question sometimes when I can't get people to start talking. But I've transitioned because I watch a lot of other people's typing work. I've transitioned to asking another opening question, which is, what's new with you? What's going on? Tell me about what has been happening in your life recently. And they'll tell me, oh, I cooked some food today, or I went to school today, or I started this new job. And I'll ask them, so how's your new job going? And the conversation flows like that. I do a lot of follow up questions on what my clients tell me that's going on in their lives, and I'm trying to get them to ramble freely and tell me a story about themselves with enough detail that I can have a chance to read the story that they're telling me and read which point of view it comes from. I would much rather the clients tell me a free flowing story about some stuff that's going on in their life than tell me about themselves, about their self perceptions, what they think of themselves. And to do this, I ask indirect questions. I don't usually try to ask them about their interpretations of what they think, how they think they're responding. I might do this in some cases after I've already talked to them for a while, but I open up by asking them to tell me about their day, tell me about what's going on in their lives, tell me about the new job you've been working. And I will ask people to tell me about specific things that are going on with them instead of generalizations about themselves or generalizations about their experiences. So, for example, one of the questions that I ask basically in 100% of my interviews is tell me about a time when you were in conflict with another person. This is a good question. This is an open ended question. But it prompts the subject, it prompts the client to be specific about what they're going to tell. They're going to tell me a specific story. And when I ask this question, a lot of people say I'm usually in conflict. I usually get very defensive or something like this. They, instead of answering a specific time, which I directly prompted them to do with my question, tell me about a time when you were in conflict with another person, they will automatically generalize. And I point one about this, some types in socionics, in my opinion, do automatically generalize more than others and are more likely to engage in this behavior, which I've noticed because I've interviewed a lot of people and asked a lot of people this question. Point number two, I will gently say something like, I'm not mad at you and I appreciate your answer, but you did not answer my question. I asked you about a specific time when you had a conflict with another person. So here, I'm going to ask you this question again. And again, I'm not mad at you, but I'd like to know your answer. That's why I asked the question, is because I'd like to know your answer. So tell me about a time when you had a conflict with another person. And sometimes they'll still generalize. Sometimes they are absolutely resistant to coming up with specific examples. Maybe then it gets to be a bit informative. But I'll do my damnedest to try to get them to be specific and give them plenty of time to think about a specific example. Take your time, and talk about any kind of example that comes up to you, that seems to be that comes to mind, that's at the top of your mind. I want to talk to you about the things that are at the top of your mind, whatever those things are.
What's the of prefacing it with "I'm not mad at you"? That seems kind of odd to preface it in that manner.
It's just a little bit of interpersonal softness, which is another possible element of doing interviews. Interviews are a really weird situation that I have done hundreds of interviews. I'm comfortable in the situation, the context of interviewing someone in a formal way that I try to keep very informal. Other people are not used to this social context. It's a very strange thing to have a strange man on the internet ask you a bunch of personal questions that are he would like to have invasive answers to. So I do not emphasize very much the rapport building with your client, or with being with getting them to feel more comfortable. I've listened to other people give similar kinds of lectures to this one about how to do typing work, and a lot of the times people who talk about this subject talk very much about how to keep your client comfortable, how to generate rapport. And I think all of that stuff is a good thing. It's good to generate rapport. It's good to have your client comfortable. I focus on this much less than other people, and I think it shows in the quality of other people's questions, even if they end up being comfortable with their client. In fact, in Victor Gulyenko's book in 2019, he has the whole book is trash. He has some very interesting comments, which is by far the most interesting section in the entire book, about how to do diagnostic work. And he says that even if the subject does not agree with your assessment of them, if they enjoyed the session and they felt like you respected them as a person, then you've succeeded. It doesn't, and if the subject does not respect you, then you have not succeeded, regardless of how much information you got about that person's type. And this pertains to Gulyenko's ethical views about doing diagnostic work, but is not scientifically rigorous at all. That is not a rigorous way of determining whether or not you had a good interview, or whether or not your conclusion is accurate based on whether or not the person enjoyed being interviewed by you. But that being said, you asked me about why I say I'm not mad at you. That's the reason. It's just to establish a rapport. I don't know. It's possible to take for some people to take this in a way where you didn't answer my question. Answer my question with a tone that is more aggressive than what I want to project. I would like the client to be comfortable and vulnerable and willing to explore their experiences and tell me these stories, potentially vulnerable personal stories. So that's why.
It's interesting. For example, I imagine that if you have individuals responding to the question of, tell me about a time that you last had conflict, this is a very performance-based question, right? Like in interviews, standard, in fact. And so I would think that you would automatically pick up on someone giving you star. So that's not a thing. Apparently that's not a thing.
It's less of a thing. It's a different kind of motivation for people that are asking to get their types analyzed than people who are going in for a job interview and want to impress people. Wanting to
Right.
impress people is that's a normal human motivation. People will often do that. It's not like I never have people that do that. But really the it's not really the kind of client that I more usually attract, which
Mhm.
are a bunch of introspective people on the internet that want to learn more about themselves, that are usually motivated enough to to introspect about themselves to have completed my long survey. Um, and so I don't usually feel like there is this much self um, self inflation in my interviews, although it does happen sometimes.
So I didn't, I'm kind of, I don't know why you thought about self-inflation, but it was more along the lines of just having a format to go off of, just realizing that this was, in fact, a question that could easily be answered in that manner, right? Like, so, I don't know. Okay, go on.
Mhm. Um, One other thing that people do frequently, other typists do, is they ask about hypothetical situations, and this is a really bad practice. And at the end of this interview, or sorry, at the end of this presentation, I have some samples about some common errors not to do. And hypothetical situations are abstract; they're difficult for people to reason about. If you ask a person, tell me about a time when you had a conflict, this is maybe they don't easily remember situations and they need a moment to think about some circumstances that they had. But this is easier than asking them to reason abstractly about, imagine that you had a conflict with somebody else and they were wasting your time or something like that. And this is a very vague kind of question, and it asks the more detail you give it, you give more detail, but you're asking people to be in a situation that they haven't actually been in. They don't have direct experience to draw from. They're probably guessing about what they would be doing. Sometimes they have more educated guessing than others if they're good self-observers, but again, the people's own estimations of themselves are not really what I'm interested in. They're not really what I'm trying to get to. I would much rather hear them tell stories that have actually happened than reason hypothetically. And I will give an example of a question that was too hypothetical in the video portion at the end. Oh, I messed up the thing.
I I have a question.
Yeah.
Like, how many questions of this similar type of specific questions of something happened in the past? How much it is enough for you to determine features from the type?
Depends on how detailed the story is. Again, really what I want is for people to ramble freely about stories that they have about themselves.
Usually,
So
like in an interview, how much like story questions it would be enough?
it depends how detailed they are. Two to four is probably how many I try to ask, but I encourage people to tell me more stories. Um, is very Most of the time I'm trying to get out of the way and listen to what other people have to say. And um, sometimes instead of doing that, I do rapport building and provide my own experiences to loosen people up. But that's just a rapport building technique. Um, sometimes I have to ask them more things because their stories weren't detailed enough. Um,
Mm.
do I have my own questions? Yeah. So uh, here's some of the questions that I usually or almost always ask in my interviews that provide. Some of them are providing stories, and these are all open-ended prompts. So the one here that asks about a specific time, a specific instance, a specific tell me about a specific story about something specifically that happened is this one. Tell me about a time you've been in conflict with another person. But that being said, there's a lot that I do, and I've gotten to be used at this. Used to this. I ask a lot of specific follow-ups from things that people have already told me. I don't really set myself to here's a script, here's a bunch of questions that I ask, and I'm going to ask these questions. I don't generally do that. In fact, I don't even ask all these questions here on this slide of questions that I almost always ask. I usually ask them. And I have some other questions. Do I have? Yeah, I have some other questions that I occasionally ask um, that are also open-ended, but for various reasons, I found these questions less useful. Some of these questions do directly probe people to analyze themselves. Like, what are your greatest strengths as a person? What are your greatest weaknesses as a person? These are asking for people's self-perception. And I usually try to be very clear about this to myself, and sometimes clear about this to the other person, that I'm asking questions that probe self-perception as opposed to storytelling. But you could ask sort of for some storytelling. So this question, how do you decorate your living space? They might tell me some things in general, and then I'll ask more specific things about, well, like what I if they say I have a couple of posters but very sparse, I don't really pay that much attention to my living space. I'll say, well, what posters, what why did you decide to pick those posters? And maybe they'll tell me a story about about the Transformers, their hobby of Transformers that they like and why they like that. Maybe there'll be some useful stuff in that story. So that's the kind of way that I ask follow-up questions. So all of these questions, I'm not going to go through each of these questions, which I did when I gave this lecture the last time. All these questions I think are very good. I've found some indirect ways about asking people about their life situation. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time is a very good way of asking people about what their job is, what they study, without actually asking them what their job is, what they study. It's a more open-ended way for them to tell me about what's on their mind in telling this story. Sometimes people are very career focused and sometimes people are not very career focused. So you could imagine how people who are not very career focused answer this question, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, by just talking about their friendships or where they expect to be with their boyfriend or girlfriend in 5 years from now. And that's the first thing on their mind, so that's what they talk about. I try to probe people's social world. Do you have many friends? Despite the fact that almost everybody answers the question, do you have many friends? With the same kind of answer, which is, I don't have very many close friends. I have a few close friends, but I have many acquaintances. Almost everybody gives that answer, which is fine because I'm asking the question to ask follow-up questions. If people give me that answer, I ask, what is the reason why those people became your close friends? Why are those people? And then they'll think about it and give me different kinds of answers from there. And I also have this question, what are some things you like or dislike about the place where you live, to probe whether or not people are focused on their environment or in what ways they're focused on their environment. Sometimes they answer this question in ways that convey that they're not focused on their environment. As an example, whoops, I didn't mean to change the slide. This slide is on the right one. Yeah, okay. For example, I had one client that I asked this question, what are some things you like or dislike about the place where you live? And he thought about this and couldn't come up with anything for a moment. And then he started ranting about how he doesn't like the mayor's politics. And he just talked about politics the entire time in response to this question, which I took to be partially a signal that he's not very focused on his physical surroundings. Which is among the purposes of asking this kind of question. This question here, is it obvious to you that you're an introvert or is it obvious to you that you're an extrovert? This is the only time. This is not the only time, but it's this is the time. This is the only question that I almost always ask that does probe self-perception. And this is because introversion and extroversion is more veridical than the other modeling that we use in typology, and people are usually right about it. If it's if people say I'm kind of not sure, I'm an ambivert, I don't take that to mean anything. But if they do say I'm an introvert, everybody knows I'm an introvert. Nobody would ever think I'm not an introvert. They're usually right about that, and they're not necessarily usually right about, say, I don't know, the other Jungian dichotomies or other typological things. If they say I'm definitely an ethical type, I don't necessarily have the perception that they're usually right about that. Although I will sometimes ask people things like, do you see yourself as an emotional person? Again, the language, do you see yourself as, makes it very clear to me and to them that I'm asking them about their self-perception. I'm not asking them to tell me a story in that circumstance. Does anyone have any other questions at this point? Any questions about anything so far and that I've talked about?
Hmm. Do you think that the process by which you, I guess, add someone to your data set might prune certain characteristics?
You mean like some people are more likely to be willing to fill out the survey and willing to go through the interview than other types that might be less represented?
Yeah, like that it might shape, like if it's 300 questions, you might have more of one particular characteristic likely to, go through that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I can't really do much about that other than collect lots of data. I can say that I feel like I've typed people of all different types in my data set so far. I usually recruit on the internet and from these kinds of typology communities, and word of mouth usually comes from these kinds of typology communities, and that skews my data set probably far more than the requirement of having a long questionnaire to fill out. There are many people that don't want to fill out the long questionnaire, and there are also many people that don't want to be recorded, and those people are not present in my data set for those reasons. Um, but I think that the bigger effect probably is the kinds of community that I'm advertising in, and I can't do anything about that other than keep collecting as much data as possible, and maybe that'll balance out, or maybe at least even if it doesn't balance out, I'll have enough different samples of the other kinds of types that I wouldn't normally get uh, in that data set, because I just have a lot of samples, even if it's still, the quadrant
Yeah,
distribution, for example, still heavily favors beta types because of where I get my subjects. I have enough other types as well.
yeah, it wouldn't compromise the data set. It might, tweak the distributions.
Yeah, I think that probably
And
is true.
but you also said that you wrote a script that tested for, the person, like the randomness,
Yeah.
like a degree of randomness that the person, answered the questions with, and you found it to be like basically close to random. It
Yeah.
like, do you run that assessment on, I guess, all of your respondents?
I only recently developed that part. I ran it on some of the other responses. Most of the responses were much less random than I didn't run it on all. So I don't know. I had like 200, 250, 300 responses, something like this. And of those 250, 300 responses, not all of them are usable responses. But I ran it on a bunch of different usable responses, and they were mostly much less random than the one that I suspected specifically of answering randomly. There was one exception. There was another response pattern that the data set was quite random among the 20 to 30 that I cherry picked to look at. So I do plan to do this and look at the other responses to see if they're equally random. But I didn't have this for most of the time that I was collecting my data. So I didn't check it.
Okay.
Any other questions about anything so far in this lecture? All right. I'm going to review in the original lecture. I'm going to kind of go through this part quickly. I reviewed I took some questions from various other people's sets of questions just to evaluate how good I felt they were, as open-ended prompts that were specific and not hypothetical, and avoided people prompting people to answer with their self-perception. So here are some of Ibrahim's Tensor's questions that he suggests to fill out if you wanted to get typing work done from Ibrahim Tensor. The green ones are questions that I like. The red ones are questions that I don't like, often because they're vague, or they're questions that people will answer the same way that don't really necessarily have lots of follow-up questions. And the yellow ones are somewhere in the middle. So Ibrahim's Tensor's questions tend to be a lot of open-ended, but he has also some questions here that are kind of prompting people to analyze themselves. What are your values and why? That's a question that asks you to analyze yourself that I don't like. People are gonna talk in a very abstract way and not about their specific experiences. How do you react to conflict? What do you do if somebody insults or attacks you? This is hypothetical. I really suggest to avoid hypothetical questions. Okay, and Ibrahim has more questions. I'm not going to go through all of these questions. The previous time that I did this lecture, where I was only doing this part of the lecture, I went through these questions much more. But Ibrahim's questions there's a lot of green and there's a lot of yellow and there's some red. Here's some questions from PDB. Not to make fun of PDB, it's all red. There's a bunch of vague questions. How do you express yourself? I don't know. This is a self-analytical question. How do you make decisions? You're asking people to analyze themselves and not going to tell you any stories about anything useful. Yeah, these questions are, and I don't remember exactly where I took these. I took these from some questionnaire that I found on PDB somewhere.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you do when someone don't know how to answer the question?
Usually it depends on some factors. There's no hard and fast rules about this, but the most common thing that I'm likely to do, especially if it's the first time that they don't answer the question, is I'm going to say, take your time, and then I'll stay quiet. Being quiet for periods of time, letting people think of answers, is a virtue here. I also take written notes, and so this is true, I just take written notes. The most important part of me taking written notes is me understanding what they said well enough for me to process it and write it down. It doesn't matter if this was true when I was in school too. I've discovered this technique where when I was studying for my final exams, I would look at all my notes that I had written throughout the year, and I would understand them well enough to write them down again, and then I would throw them all away. So the process of taking written notes takes some time, and sometimes people are confused by long periods of silence. They're unnerved. They think it's awkward. So I can say, well, I'm taking some notes, and then while I'm taking notes, it's often the case that they will think of more things to say and just add more stuff. But if they're really having trouble answering a question that I asked them, I will first press them to try to answer it and give them all of the time that they need, and just kind of not continue not try to push things along until they give me something. And if they really don't, then I'll move on to something else and ask similar open-ended questions in a different way and see if they can tell me a story about some things. Sometimes this gets
Okay.
difficult because, again, you get all different types, literally, in doing interviews, and sometimes the questions that sometimes people are very shy, or they're sometimes people have very little self-concept about anything about themselves. Sometimes people are allergic to saying anything specific about their experiences. They will generalize, and if you ask them over and over to give you a
Yeah,
specific time, they can't think of one. And so sometimes this can be difficult, but using variations of all these techniques, repeat the question kindly and ask them to answer it if they didn't answer it because they didn't give a specific answer, or just delaying and giving them time to think. All of these are the kinds of techniques I
yeah.
try in order to make them try to answer.
I was thinking of a case more of someone being agnostic about the answer, like the question doesn't really have an answer or something, or like they just don't know.
I don't feel like I ask questions like that are very most of my questions are asking for kind of specific instances. Like, for instance, this question from before, uh tell me about a time when you've been in a conflict with somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a hard question to say that you've never been. People sometimes people are very conflict avoidant, and they'll tell me so, and they have a difficult time thinking about conflicts or talking about the conflicts because they wipe the conflicts away right away. But there's nobody that has never been in a conflict with somebody else. They could think of something. And in cases where people are very conflict avoidant, I'll notice that they're conflict avoidant and struggling to answer this question, but I will try and press them to tell me something, even if it's a very
Okay,
light. Then they'll usually maybe be able to think of a light example of something minor, and they'll emphasize how it's not that big of a deal and it's okay, but I did have this conflict, and that's a useful story too.
I see.
That's one of the things about this question is it's very useful to tell when people are very conflict avoidant. That's relevant to socionics modeling.
Another question, how long do your type interviews typically take?
1 to 2 hours.
Okay.
I when I'm working with other typists, and when I say working, what I usually mean by this is listening in and butting in with my own recommendations, uh, that are slightly solicited or unsolicited. Um, I think that people often tend to do too short of interviews. 30 minutes is really the bare minimum, and I prefer 45 minutes. I think that people are too hasty in deciding to commit to a read on an individual person. I think it's an open question whether or not you can even get enough information about a person just from talking to them for 1 hour, 2 hours, because they've lived in their shoes for many years, and you're talking to them for 1 hour, and you have the audacity to claim that you're a good enough reader and you know best, and you can tell them what kind of person they are better than they can in these 1 or 2 hours. I'm not saying that that is not justified, but it is helpful to keep in mind that you're only seeing them for kind of a slice. And I think that it's a good amount of time for me not to get really tired. If the interview is too long, then it tends to focus on the same kinds of stories, and it also, people get tired. I get tired. If I'm doing an interview for more than 2.5 hours, I will personally get tired and not think very well because I'm tired. But 1 to 2 hours is a good amount of time for me, and I think is a good amount of time for collecting data. And people that are doing their interviews in 30 minutes, I'm very leery of. And people that are doing their interviews in 15, 20 minutes are doing it wrong. There's almost no justification for how an interview could be not longer, could be shorter than 30 minutes and still give you enough information, enough feel for the person you're talking to. Does anyone else have any other question?
What do you think the point of typology is?
That's a vague question that I don't want to answer right now. Does anyone else have a different question?
I think Rev was asking if he would be able to get a copy of the recording.
Yes, I will, of this recording for this lecture. Yes, I will post this. I might have to do some video editing. The way that I did this, hopefully I won't have to do video editing. I made a small mistake and left the wrong thing on instead of showing slides for a while. But I will upload this at some point to my other channel, and I will post this here.
Nice. You have a YouTube channel as well, Astervex, or are you talking about different,
Yeah,
like your web?
I have a channel. That channel has, well, the channel has the stuff that I'm going to, I have a channel that has copies of all of my interviews, which I'm not sharing publicly because there's privacy matters. I tell people that I collect that I'm going to record them and I'm going to show them to my colleagues if I need to show them to my colleagues, but that I'm not going to post their interviews in public, unless they, consent or ask me to. And this is the minimum amount that I need, so that's the minimum amount that I ask for. So the channel mostly has interviews of other people that I might be willing to show people for educational purposes or establish collegial relationships with other people about typing work. I do this all the time, or rather, I search for doing this all the time, and people usually consume a little bit of interview work and then they move on with their lives. But with some of my colleagues, I do this all the time that I've established good, trusting working relationships with. I trust them that they will not share the interviews any further if I don't tell them to. And also when I'm showing people typing work, I will bias. I have a large catalog of typing work that I can find examples of certain things, certain themes that I might be talking about. But when I'm first getting to know people, I will try and show them work that has been posted in public before, that is already in public, as opposed to the stuff that I keep semi-private. So that's most of the videos that are on my channel, and I'm not going to show those to people in public. But talk to me about typing work, and if you're interested in typing work, I'm interested in doing typing review sessions with people for work that I've done that I need assistance with, or work that is in public. When Jack releases new interviews, I think Jack's a great interviewer and his conclusions are not so great, but that doesn't matter to me. I watch his interviews anyway for fun to see what to do the typing puzzles, which I enjoy doing. And whenever that happens, sometimes I do these events on my own small server that nobody pays attention to, of doing we watch the video at the same time and pause it and talk about our thoughts about the client. So I do things like that. The only other videos that are on my channel that are in public are a video I made a long time ago analyzing Avery Brooks, who's an actor, and I was using him as a case study. And I also have these videos that I'm going to show at the end of this lecture, where I took some clips from people's interviews where they did bad techniques, and one clip from my own interview where I did some good techniques. And those are the only videos that are on my channel in public. But I plan to post these lectures also on that channel. Maybe someday there will be more content, but I'm not super into the talking about theoretical content. Maybe that'll change. I focus much more on doing casework myself.
Rev is also asking, which model of socionics are you using primarily?
My view is that socionics is a theory of quadras. I use Western socionics, which uses Mohs model A. Western socionics I would define as the view that socionics is primarily a theory of quadras, more than half a theory of quadras or half a theory of quadras. Western socionics people focus on quadras a lot more than other schools. Ibrahim Tensor and Jack Aaron, for example, I would describe as they both see socionics as more than half a theory of quadras, but they also use dimensionality. My own personal view is that socionics is entirely a theory of quadras, and where Ibrahim Tensor has this modeling called the presence cube, where he divides socionics into 70-ish% quadras and 30% dimensionality. My view is that dimensionality does not exist. That is true of my own modeling, and it is entirely a theory of quadras. So only the quadra dimension of Ibrahim's cube is interesting, and the dimensionality dimension of it does not exist. That is my modeling. And I'm happy to talk at length about my modeling, but this is not the lecture for that. I don't want to get bogged down in it. I would be happy to talk about it elsewhere. That is not a popular view, by the way, that dimensionality does not exist. A lot of people get ruffled by that idea. As useful to yeah, well, this is all modeling talk. We can talk about this some other time. Does anyone else have any other questions? This is essentially the Q&A portion of this this presentation. The only other thing I have, other than analyzing these bad questions from PDB, is the videos that I have of some examples of interview techniques to avoid or to follow.
Wait,
So
what's a bold claim, Polly?
that dimensionality does not exist. I'm comfortable with it. I couldn't be more comfortable with this claim. But it is very different than with modeling that a lot of other people in socionics have, including Western socionics. I have never thought about dimensionalities as an interesting feature. I learned about socionics before dimensionality was very popular. Dimensionality existed, but it was in Russian work. Dimensionality is not fundamental to Model A. Sometimes people claim that it's part of Model A. It's not. Augusta never said anything about dimensionality. Dimensionality was developed in the 90s by Alexander Bukalov and Vladimir Yermak. I think Yermak was probably the guy that invented dimensionality, although the earliest attributable citations are for both Bukalov and Yermak. And my view has always been from the time that I learned about dimensionality, after I learned about Model A and after I learned about quadras and after I already thought about quadras as being interesting, is that dimensionality has nothing to do with anything. And I've always thought that. And anyway, again, this is all modeling talk. And I guess this is modeling talk that we can engage in because I hope that the lecture should be Q&A focused. And if this is an interesting topic for people, then we could talk about this topic. But it gets bigger than the stuff that I talked about in this lecture, which I really envisioned as being focused on typing work and on my own project and efforts to make a written questionnaire. But fine, feel free to ask your questions about dimensionality and modeling.
Okay. Are you gonna do another lecture for the model and theory itself?
Possibly. I would have to do some work for that.
Okay. Would you explain how the questions relate to the model?
Sorry, which questions?
The questions of the interview.
They don't. These questions, like I said, this is another bold claim. This is a bold claim. Again, I'm very comfortable with that. Not everyone is going to like. Here's the title page for this this lecture. All models. no matter what model you're using, if you're using Socionics, you're using the Enneagram, you're using MBTI, you're using shitty models like OPS or CSJ, whatever. Um, you, the way that you approach reading a client does not change depending on what kind of models you're looking at. It should not change. If you are changing the kinds of questions you ask, that suggests that you're not really doing reading, and that suggests that your understanding of typology is not that sophisticated. That's what I think about a lot of interviewers that ask very directed questions about their modeling. That sometimes they ask very impatiently, or they ask questions that ask people to self-analyze. Again, self-analyzing is really not something that I want. I want them to show me who they are rather than tell me who they are. Because if they
Yeah.
tell me who they are, again, there's this broad question about whether or not people are right about themselves. I don't trust that they're right about themselves, and I think that this is listen, when you talk to people, sometimes you have to ask them to do analysis, and I'm not an exception to this. But typists, as a rule, especially intermediate typists, even good typists, have a vast over-reliance on asking people to analyze themselves instead of being sufficiently skeptical. You should, as a typist, be very skeptical about what people tell you about themselves. You should ask yourself if they're right, if there's evidence that they're showing you that supports this view that they have about themselves, that they're this certain way, because this is a big problem. Sometimes they're wrong. I think that every serious typist, this is another bold claim, I'm full of bold claims, every serious typist has grappled with the self-perception problem. And that being said, there are plenty of serious typists that understand the self-perception problem that are still not sufficiently skeptical. And many times they feel they rely too much on what people tell them, whether they intentionally do this or not. Jack Aaron, who I don't exactly mean to pick on, but who is a good source of interview material because he's done a lot of it, has this kind of problem. And Jack Aaron definitely has cases where he's skeptical of what people tell him. I don't think he does this nearly enough. I think there's many cases when he should be more skeptical than he is about what his clients tell them. To some extent, this is a pressure of doing a paid interview. That's probably true. It's almost certainly true that he feels the need to have his clients feel satisfied so that they can give him positive reviews and he can make more money. That's a normal human motivation, but that doesn't change the fact that he feels, to me, I think this is not the only reason that, like, I don't think it's just that he's doing paid interviews. I think he's just an open person that wants to believe that people should be part of the process of analyzing their own types. And I don't believe in that process in the same way. I'm happy to talk about it with people, but I don't believe in people being right about themselves all the time. There's my experience leads me to believe that they're not, and I'm happy like sometimes I get good self-observers and I do talk about the dynamics of what's going on or what they think is going on with them, but that doesn't happen all the time. And
Okay.
typists that don't acknowledge that there's a self-perception problem on some level, those typists are much lower level. They're much less competent than people. Every serious typist engages with this on some level.
So,
Go ahead.
So these guiding principles are kind of best way to get the most data possible in an interview, right?
I
As
would
I
say so,
understand.
yeah.
Okay. Right. Go ahead, Vlad, and finish.
Yeah, I wanted to shift gears just a little bit. So as far as the standardized questionnaire, it sounds like this is very much of the whole data arriving at results versus superimposing the results on the data, correct?
Mhm.
And the actual interview session is where you're actually typing them. I'm curious to find out if you take both uh like both of the individuals or the client's responses to see if there's like what kinds of discrepancies you might be seeing between the two.
To be honest with you, I don't have enough data to really have looked at this. I've looked at this a little bit, but the way that I've looked at this hasn't been. It's a large data set and it's hard to make sense of. So my expectation is to really have an algorithm do this as opposed to try and navigate this myself.
Right,
It's
right.
yeah,
Okay.
it's hard to sift through a lot of data.
Yeah, because of the questions, I'm wondering. Yeah, I think that would actually be very useful to be able to see how someone is answering the questionnaires and how they're answering the interview questions and if things are actually aligning.
Yeah. It might be possible to have a little bit of cherry-picked data to investigate those questions. Some particular things that I expect people might be wrong about and see if they are wrong about them. But that's again, that's a lot of data to sort through, and I'd have to do some cherry picking for that. Which is cherry picking is okay if you're just exploring your data, which in this case we are. I also like to avoid cherry picking, and I'm trying. Most of my focus has been on the data collection. I'm trying to collect a large number of samples, and I'm very aware that I don't have enough samples, and I'm not going to have enough samples for a long time.
To follow up with that, so your online type assessments elicit a type or yields a type, right?
Yeah, I usually yes.
Okay.
Maybe in some cases I try to interview people and I can't come up with anything, but most of the time that's the point. I try and come up with a type.
Okay.
And I also
Or the
have the
online
different. I
the
have
online assessment specifically, right?
the written
Does
No,
the
questionnaire.
online
The written
assessment
questionnaire does
uh
not do anything right now. I'm just collecting data.
okay, gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
what do you see as being like, as far as what you're doing, collecting all of this data? What are some of the best use cases that you can think of as far as like applicability and utility goes
I want to
for it?
test for intertype compatibility, which is some predictions that Augusta made. I think that I mentioned this briefly at the beginning of the lecture, that Augusta had this basically hard version of intertype relations where she even made some bold claims that are stupid, that like non-dual marriages fail more than 50% of the time or something like that. I think Augusta's hard version of intertype relations was way too strong. It seems very obvious, like it seems trivial that this can't be true. But I'm interested in evaluating a softer version of intertype relations, that maybe some of the principles that she thought of are reasonable starting points to examine whether or not people might be compatible, and especially compatible if you assigned them to live with each other. So this might have applications for things like dating apps or things like workplace management, maybe, but the applications that I have in mind are more random assignments when people are assigned to live with each other. There are various situations when this might happen, but the primary situation and the situation in which would be convenient to get data for testing is in college freshmen, when college freshmen enroll in university and get assigned with a random roommate. and they they have to live with that roommate for some months out of the year. Possibly they don't if they have to get roommate changes, but they're randomly assigned essentially live with somebody for another year. And that's a situation, if Augusta's theory about intertype relations is correct, that we could help people find friends better or find roommates that they're more compatible with and take away one of the stressors of collegiate life.
Oh, interesting.
So there's applications like that. There are other situations where people are randomly assigned to live together in military organizations and prisons, missionary organizations. But the one that comes to mind most readily is college freshmen.
Very interesting. Okay, you're going after what the Socion was built on and trying to make it more viable. Okay.
I like I said at the very beginning of the lecture, I have always tried to think about this topic in a rigorous way and try to think about what tangible applications could be made from this. Most people, a lot of people seem to be interested in the cybernetic properties of the Socion, but they have very little tangible to suggest. So here's the best tangible experiments that I would like to someday run if ever we could do the diagnostics correctly. Is there any other question?
I guess I have one more question.
Go ahead.
But what are your thoughts on the interview format versus seeing someone in the wild?
I like seeing people in the wild. Seeing people in the wild will often give you more naturalistic contexts for interaction than, again, this artificial interview where I'm asking a bunch of uncomfortable personal questions to people. I like seeing people in the wild. I would probably prefer to do that if that were feasible, but in order to collect lots of data from lots of people, I do voice interviews instead. And I like video as well. I don't require all of my clients to do video because it's not necessary and a lot of people don't want to do it. But video is better than voice. You have a face-to-face connection. You can see what people are talking about. Sometimes I can see expressions that I think are interesting, or I can see that people compose themselves in a certain way. Sometimes I've made observations that people are physically stiff in the way that they answer some questions. So I think all that is good information. All of this is much, much better. Voice calling only is the minimum level that I'm willing to do. I used to do a lot of written questionnaires. They're a huge waste of time. A picture is worth 1,000 words, or as it turns out, a phone call is worth 1,000 words. It's possible to get a lot of information if people write a lot and in detail about good stories about themselves, but people almost never do it. It almost always is a waste of my time.
Right. I lied. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
When you do the video questions, are you also on video?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking.
It just makes people more comfortable. I have no issue being on video.
That's it from me.
Any other question? I'll move on to the examples section of this lecture here. So let's switch to this. Oh, I should just let him, no reason. All right. This section is probably going to be about 25 minutes, and it will all be, what did I do here? I did this. Earlier in the lecture, I went to this blog post, but I have here some examples of 4 videos of some things that I describe as poor practices, and some things that and then I have a video of myself starting off an interview with a client. Let me know if you can hear this. I believe you should be able to hear this over the stream, but I'm just streaming my browser here. And I should fix this on this end as well. Give me 1 second to do the technical thing. Oh, I see what I did here. Okay. All right. Here's the first example.
Do this. First of all, I'll just give the disclaimer publicly. First of all,
Can everyone hear this? Just want to make sure
Yeah,
that
I
the
can
audio
hear.
is working. Okay, good.
you know, I can only go off the answers you provide me, so anything you say to me, if it's honest or dishonest, my typing of you is only going to be indicative of that. Does that make sense?
Depends how personal it is, but yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I would much rather if it's a personal question and you don't want to answer, and my questions aren't that crazy, so I would rather you just say I prefer not to say, or maybe could you ask in a different way so you could answer it a different way. That would be totally fine. But just as if I ask you what your favorite color is and it's green and you say red, then it fucks with your typing, you know. That won't be a typing question, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait a second.
So, and then on my end as well,
Sorry, what?
Acerix, can you mute yourself because it's echoing?
Oh,
You're
sorry. Okay.
I have to realize that even no matter how hard I try not to, that I'm still going to associate certain things with certain characteristics that may not be, you know, may not be the best in everything, may not be accurate, and I'm going to try not to do that as much as possible, but we all still can be subjected to bias, so you're aware of that as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's both try not to do this, and then it should be a nice typing session. Alright, are you ready?
Yeah. Ready.
Alright, let's do this. So,
All right. So that video showcased something that a lot of typists. Oh shit. I'm still muted. Okay. All right. So that video showcased a lot of something that a lot of typists do, which is managing expectations and telling people a lot of information about what typing sessions are and whether or not, you know, the typing they give is accurate, and making sure that other people essentially don't get mad at them for proffering their own opinions. This is not something I personally do. If you can do this, or sorry, if you want to do this, you can. There's nothing exactly wrong with doing this, because this is not showcasing any question that he actually asked of the client. That this typing session didn't even start. But I showcased this video because it occurs to me that we just spent 90 seconds with this client, and what did we learn about this client? Nothing. This is just kind of wasting time. Everything he said is obvious. It's obvious that he's doing a typing session, and people are, you know, a typing session is everything he said about how, frankly, everything he said is stuff that I tuned out. I wasn't listening to it because I've listened to a lot of typing work. And he's in fact asking the subject, or asking the client to give him verbal confirmation that she understands that he's just a typist and he'll do the best job that he can. But it's obvious that he's a typist, and it's obvious that he'll do the best job he can. So I don't really recommend to do this. I'd recommend to just get into it. Now we'll talk about the remaining examples will actually talk about the interview portion as opposed to the pre-interview portion.
not really giving you too much of a blueprint for how you got to answer this, but if I just asked you, what is your relationship like with things practical? What would you say?
You mean things that involve,
Practicality in general, perhaps.
like, practicality is.
I just wanted to say practicality in general. What are your thoughts about practicality in general? This is a really vague kind of question, and you'll see this client grapple with trying to figure out how to address this vague, overly generalized question that involves trying to analyze yourself.
Activity, right?
Yeah, just things that are
Working with
practical or
hands.
perhaps pragmatism.
Pragmatism. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, sure. Maybe this is an answer within itself, but practicality is just, you know, if I mean, we could look up the dictionary definition if need be, but if I had to define it in my own
Yeah.
terms, it'd probably be just something making sense or being like an actual good decision rather than be convoluted, overcomplicated.
Not what I was talking about practicality.
Sure, then tell me what, yeah. Then you tell me what
I
you
mean,
meant.
when I was talking about practical things, I was more like meaning not mental things.
You said not
to
what
do with
things?
Physical. Not
Oh,
like-
meant, okay. So concrete
not
versus
to do with-
abstract?
Yes, kind of like that. Good. But practicality in general.
This background music is actually in the Hyena, who is the typist here, did this session himself, and this background music is his music.
If you ask me, what did you ask me about practicality?
Just what is your relationship with it like?
Okay, so I'm not practical. I feel like sometimes, especially at work, I lack common sense, and some things that other people would find logical, I might not have thought about. Like, if I can do something. Wait, I got the text. Okay. If I can do something more productively, I try to find ways to do that, but I can't always think of the best way. So I end up doing things wrong in that way, in that sense. I try to find the best solutions. I don't think I can really do that. Sometimes I feel like I need to be told how it's done.
Okay. Yeah, but you do, okay, so you said you like being told how it's done, correct? Or how it should be done?
I mean, yeah, I like it, but if I had to choose, I would like to be more practical. I'm just
Okay,
not.
yeah, that's a beautiful answer. That really gives me exactly what I was trying to check for there. Let's see.
So a long section there with him trying to get to his beautiful answer that he was trying to check for, that she would like to be more practical, whatever she means by that. You kind of saw, I wanted to illustrate in that example, she struggled to answer this question, or struggled to really say much. And when the subject is, when the client is struggling to figure out what to say, you're probably not going to pay the best attention either. So I just think that question was an overly vague question, a kind of a leading question where he had some modeling in his head that he was trying to probe for and ask his client to directly answer that modeling or directly analyze. That's not a great technique. Making fun of Hyena's background music. This is totally off the off of what I expected to do.
Not too much. I guess we were going to do a
Oh shit.
typing session.
All right. Hyena's background music is he did this in his, so I'm the crazy guy, right? I watch so much of these typing work for fun. And Hyena's actually, like, I'm trying to pick on Hyena. I am picking on Hyena. I'm picking on him for doing this public work, and he made some errors in it. But here we're just going to pick on him, right? This is his introduction. Sorry, cover your ears.
All right.
That was not. Not in that video. Did he remove this from his other videos?
All right, what's up?
I think he removed it from all his other videos. Maybe I actually have this. Hold on. He had something that you should cover your ears for.
All right,
No, not that
we're
one.
rolling finally. I'll be.
You know what? I removed this. I removed it from his. All right, never mind. Sorry. He had a really loud, obnoxious intro for like 45 seconds. It was ear destroying, and I guess he edited his videos to no longer have this intro, which is a good thing. Anyway, that wasn't a very successful showcase of his loud, annoying intro. I might have it on one of my older videos. But yeah, don't have a loud, annoying intro. That's another technique. All right. Sorry about that. Short waste of time. All right, let's have some more examples of yeah, you're welcome for me losing it. I'm sure you didn't actually want to hear any of it. There's loud, incredibly blaring music. Okay. Let's make fun of some other bad typists.
Say like change maybe on the horizon, right? You're not sure though.
And the background music here, previously the background music was hyenas. Here the background sound is my fault. I was recording this at a time when I was also playing chess in the background, and so you hear the noises for the chess pieces moving, and there's also somebody like mowing their lawn in the background.
Now, let's say you're speculating, right, on what's to come. Does thinking about the future, ruminating about it, give you anxiety?
It gives me the I am thinking too much kind of anxiety, because it's like when the future, I mentioned the whole thing about if it's not proven, then the other thing is a possibility. When you talk about the future, you're talking about millions and millions of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And my brain will try to go overwhelmed by the.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good kind of anxiety.
Okay. So would you say that you like to make sure that you have a plan for things?
I'm gonna have to think about that one. Making sure I have a plan.
We can move on. What would you say are some of your interests?
I honestly do think I need some sort of plan. I don't like going into anything completely blind. The plan doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be fully thought out, but I need some sort of plan.
Listen to how impatient he is. He's taking like asks for 10 seconds to think about the answer to the question, and he's already like, we can just move on. He's so impatient in his approach, which is he's impatient in everything he does and all of typology, but he's just going to keep asking some disconnected questions.
Okie dokie. Cool. Would you say that you're prone to aggression or sharp changes in mood that can go from placid to hostile, belligerent even?
No.
Okay. Would you say that others would describe your sense of humor as more businesslike, mature, or more childlike, strange?
Business-like and mature, I suppose.
Would you say that you're more mature than most people your age?
Yes. and I show it by behaving like an idiot. But I honestly do believe that's part of being mature.
What were some of the goals that you had prior to leaving college, graduating college? And did you have any success in attaining them?
My goals. I wanted to have a profession where I would be of service to someone and be able to make goals, which is why I said college was a waste of time. That being said, I'm not sure if I have the same goals, but that wasn't the question. Continue.
Yeah, sorry. By the way, your voice is anyone else hearing him cut out a little bit, or is it just me?
Like in a really bad way?
Like no one else hears him cutting out? Like, okay.
I have been.
I'll proceed.
This is all on the recording. The cutting out is from the
Oh,
recording.
okay,
The client was disconnecting slightly at the time.
Not the only one there. All right. So, a couple more. Would you say you like to work with your hands?
No.
In a way, he's not actually doing an interview. There's no difference from what he's doing that you couldn't also do as a written questionnaire. If he's just saying, do you like to work with your hands? That's something that you could, write the written questionnaire that already doesn't work and just ask that question.
Would you say you're more creative or more disciplined?
Creative.
Would you say who's someone that you admire or respect deeply?
Oh, my older sister.
Okay, why?
Honestly, I consider her to be like the wisest person I know. And it's to the point where when my parents were basically flailing about how to be parents, she was basically the one who raised me. But at the same time, she doesn't present herself as my parent or anything. And whenever we talk, we just have fun. But yeah.
Do you write or read poetry?
I haven't in many years, so I'm gonna say no.
Would you say you have a good gut instinct?
Yes.
Do you tend to adapt to the environment of the room, or do you tend to try and be the one who stands out?
I have no idea.
Do you like
I
or
guess-
play any sports?
I don't play any sports. As for the adapting to the environment, I guess if it's a professional environment, I adapt. If not, then I'm okay with standing up.
So I think in a lot of ways that video speaks for itself. Lamb Sauce is obviously a really impatient thinker, and you could hear this in the pace of his questions in this interview. Not really listening to the questions. He was also doing this chunking thing, where he expects people to answer in ways that he expects people to be right about themselves and be able to tell you if they like to work with their hands or if they have various different features. All of this kind of questioning is disorganized and really very difficult to tell much of anything concretely about the client. Maybe you can ask this question about all of the different samples here. How much did you really learn about the client? For, I don't know, it was only a short segment, 5-minute video of him asking questions, but did you learn anything about the client from that sequence of questions? I don't feel like I learned much of anything. So this is why I think of this as a mistake. The next example, again, I want you to ask, what did you learn about the client from, in this next upcoming video is going to be showcasing a hypothetical question and showcasing why hypothetical questions are not good. They're hard to reason about, and they don't necessarily teach us too much.
If you were to have a child and the child was to question or disobey rules that you had set for your household, which could include perhaps if you intend to raise them as you did yourself in a religious, as you converted yourself afterwards in a religious manner, or even other rules. How would you react to or handle such a situation? Do you think this is even useful to think about before you have children?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a desire of mine, and yeah, I anticipate like having kids would be lots of interesting challenges and unique personalities, perhaps one's potentially very different than mine. But at the same time, I think it's kind of a day-by-day thing, right? It's not like they're born and they have like a fully developed personality. It's, they're growing like from a baby to a child to like an adult or whatever. At the same time, like I would be growing as a parent and how I raise them and stuff like that.
So again,
tell me about
in some ways that client didn't really answer that question much, but just to showcase, again, hypothetical questions aren't very good. They're hard to reason about. That client almost kind of said, "I don't really know," as his long-winded answer. Hypotheticals are abstract to reason about, and even if people give you a more clear answer than that, they're not going to be very reliable answers. So after that, those are all the segments I have of bad practices not to emulate. Here I have this interview with Electric Warlock that I conducted, and as you can see, it's a video interview, and I'm on video here, like you asked. Yes, I'm on video as well. And I'm going to just let this run. This is, I think, a somewhat quieter guy who I did a better job of asking open-ended questions and seeing where he would lead me to. And so this is the kind of thing I suggest to try to emulate. So I'm just going to let this run.
What kind of details can you provide to give me? Tell me about yourself. What kind of details can you provide to give me a better understanding of what sort of person you are?
I could describe. That's quite a broad question because I don't know, constantly like mulling over that. But I think I would describe myself as quite. I would say I am quite a sort of shy person mostly with most people, and I'm someone who can have an outgoing streak, but mostly around the comfort of people, like for close friends and stuff like that, or like just people who I gel with, or just get a good like vibe with. I'm I'm quite into like arts and music, stuff like that. I like like sort of tangible, creative stuff is like what I aspire to create, and um yeah, and I don't know, I'd say I'm quite like a realistic person in my like beliefs. Um, so yeah, that's how I'd like describe myself in like a very sort of like broad manner.
I will often do this where I am not averse to having these pauses where one, I write notes, and also I stop to think about what the right best next question I can ask is. And very often in these kinds of pauses, people will think of things to say as well themselves, which is also a good thing. How old are you? 24, you said?
24, yeah.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm just getting a new job at the moment for a living. I don't really I'm not making like a stable living yet. I'm sort of like still a student, so still sort of do. And I'm still like sorting that out. Like doing my final year, and then I'll sort of like move on to everything else.
What are you studying?
I'm studying sound design, so it's like basically just like manipulating sounds, and creating. It could be for like games, movies, or just simply just like enjoyment of music production and making soundtracks.
What do you like and dislike about sound design?
I like that I have like creative free reign on what I'm making. I don't. Yeah, I like that I just have like the creative control to sort of like construct whatever I feel like constructing. When I have the motivation to do it. It's all dependent on motivation. But I can sort of, yeah, I enjoy that I can make something that is just, kind of out there, interesting, and sort of the feeling of having created something like, and then getting the recognition for that is quite interesting. Like I quite enjoy that.
So what kinds of things do you create?
I'm mostly into like music production, so it's like yeah, just like anything like where I can just create my own productions and build a portfolio on that. So I enjoy that. Like when I'm feeling like super creative. So yeah, no, I like creating stuff like that. I'm not really into the idea of. I would be okay if it was like I'd make decent money from it. But I'm not really into. No, I'm not aspiring to make a career out of like audio engineering or anything like that, like Coder or something where it's sort of like my own creative sort of image rather than sort of behind the scenes type thing.
Sorry, you cut out a little bit there. You wanted to make your own. You want to be
Yeah.
the face of your creative work, as opposed to
Yeah,
being behind the
definitely.
scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of music do you make?
I make like drum and bass, some industrial, and yeah, I just like mess around sort of like with like Logic Pro X and sort of add some. Sometimes I do some like I dabble in guitar, so I'll like do some like riffs and stuff like that. I like sort of like found sound recordings and like editing the sounds to create fun like productions out of it. So yeah, just anything sort of like quite abrasive, industrial sounding, or like some like heavy sort of like drum and bass stuff. It's like the general kind of ballpark of like the type of stuff that I make.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
That's an interesting question. I'm hoping that I will actually have made enough of a decent whack.
Did I just disconnect a little bit? Was that an interruption? My computer was not responding for a few seconds.
Yeah,
No.
it's for me, but it should be fine.
Sorry about that.
And go at my sort of music, hopefully a music career. So that's kind of like what I want. Because I don't really want to waste too much time by not actually putting that into fruition. Because I think I would like kick myself. But it's just a case of getting like the motivation to actually apply myself and actually do it. That's like probably the biggest goal. But I don't really spend a lot of time really thinking that much about, I don't know where I see myself that far down the line. Even though I know what I'm sort of destined to work towards or what kind of like arc I'm in my life, like what type of like point like phase I'm in during my life. I sometimes just get distracted by like the more like near future stuff sometimes. But yeah, that's my answer.
Did it freeze?
No, it's just me
No,
pausing. I
think his-
take these opportunities to pause and think and write notes. And in this case, Electric Warlock is not inserting additional thoughts because he's not that kind of person. But many people will during this time.
Oh, I was just asking because you had mentioned
Yeah.
that like you could have disconnected or something earlier. That's why.
Yeah, my computer was not responding for a short time, but it's good now. What would a career doing your own music look like to you?
I would say it would look like, I guess just making stuff that I'm happy with, like ultimately, like, and getting it out there in like an image type of way, like sort of like my own sort of creative image, and sort of, I don't know, just getting like that sort of like back and forth of like putting it out there, you know, what people's take on it is. I guess it's not like so much on like focused on that, but it's kind of like just getting something creative just like done that I'm like happy with, just getting it out there, I think.
How much do you like performing for people?
I like performing for people, provided that it's I mean, I get a bit nervous about it, so yeah, the sort of anxiety can often prohibit me maybe really going out there and sort of like doing it that much. But there's been like a few times where I've like, you know, just done like DJ sets, and I kind of get a thrill out of that. Like if it's like goes to plan and everything goes like well, and I like don't fuck up or whatever. Like it's pretty good. Like I kind of enjoy the in the experience of it. I think it's quite, yeah. I think performing is good. It's something I would want to do. I wouldn't want to just not perform entirely.
Yeah, because some musicians don't, and probably in a lot of cases, people who go that route have a, you know, it's less traditional and there's less opportunities for networking and also to be seen. And so you need to be very good at what you do typically in order to make money in any way doing that. Although you need to be generally good at what you do to make money anyway.
You definitely
Well,
do.
debatable.
I agree. It's kind of as well. It's like a bit of with music industry. It's kind of a bit like, I guess it's like a right timing thing as well. Like it's all about like when people like hit it like really well. That like they've usually kind of done the right thing at the right point, or there's a reason for why it's kind of succeeded. I don't know if I really care about it being overly popular. I don't mind it being sort of like a niche, like kind of like culture, or like an underground like club culture or something. But to actually make a living out of like music creation or arts is like very tricky. Like there's only like a few that I think sort of make it to that sort of like level. I think I would have to like get like another job as well that would like sustain me as well, whilst I sort of like do the things I also really want to do.
Just like any job, you don't particularly care about what other work you might be doing.
As long as I like don't completely detest it, then it's fine. As long as it would pay the bills and kind of give me the freedom to appreciate many other things that's around and just have a stable lifestyle.
All right. All right, that's all the content I have here. That I just cut it off at some point because this interview goes, the interview is an hour and a half long. I didn't want to show the entire thing. I just wanted to show a sample of how interviews can go. So that's all I've got. I guess I could take some more questions if there are any more questions, but I've been here for 2 hours and I'm probably ready to be done with this lecture too. So I guess let's try to keep questions light, but I'll take questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
In this interview you just shown, did you branch out to another route of the questions, or like did you stay in like with following up on the same track of questions?
None of these questions were written down or rehearsed. The only question in this entire section that is a usual question that I ask is, tell me about yourself. So
Okay.
everything here is based on what he said. He told me a story about his interest in music production and artistry, and I just kept asking follow-up questions based on what he said. There's one other question I asked, which actually two other questions that I asked that are usual questions. I asked, what do you do for a living? And I asked, how old are you? But most of the segment that I just showed was not questions that I had planned out. They were just me listening to what he said and asking follow-ups.
Okay, I see. Did you ask him a question like tell me about last time you had conflict?
I'm sure I did.
Okay, I see.
I almost always ask this question, almost every time.
Rev asked a question in the chat. He said, can you set up a structural event next?
But I don't really know what that means, a structural event.
Like about the system,
About
your system.
modeling.
Yeah, about the modeling.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I honestly think this event is better and more interesting and more informative. I've always preferred talking about casework than modeling, but I guess in recent times I've also had to focus on writing about some modeling. So perhaps I would have to do significantly more work for a lecture about modeling.
Yeah.
Maybe I could do this. Let me think about it.
I think question and answer is fine.
Yeah,
You
well,
have to
if you you have to show up. I'm happy to do the call thing, but
I did ask for it.
yeah.
Yeah. But it was good. This was good today. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone
I'm
have
also
any?
interested in the modeling event.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave it here. Thank you everybody for coming, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you for the lecture.
Later.